Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lipedema Wellness Conversations with Gail. That would be me. And the bright, shiny faces, that's what I keep calling them, of my friends. My friends today are Kelly and Jen Bell. And I am so absolutely excited about having them here with me this morning. Now, Kelly and Jen are on the East Coast, so it is bright and shining. You've got sunshine on their faces. And I'm over here on the Pacific coast. That would be the other coast, the west one, which I'm not usually at, and so I'm kind of still sitting in there here in the dark. So when you come on and you start listening to us, please drop in the comments where you're from today and your name. Sometimes your names don't show up, but we'd like to be able to greet you as usual. And here I go again, as usual on Tuesday mornings. On the fourth Tuesday morning of the month, I have this show that I usually have on Tuesday evenings because we have other events happening on the fourth Tuesday evening. So I'm glad you're here today with us. If you have any questions for Kelly and Jen as we get going, please put them in the chat. Know that we won't be able to answer all of them. Most of the time we get so many questions that we can't answer them, but we do think about them, and we might steer our conversation in that direction. So with that said, I would like to introduce Kelly and Jen the way that I know them. I started with Lipedema Simplified about 4 years ago, and I had never heard of Kelly and Jen Bell. And then one day I heard about Kelly. And I heard about Kelly because of the situation that ended up giving Kelly quite the medical journey. And he was on a webinar. And I was stunned and startled by his story. And stunned and startled. I just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't stop talking about Kelly's story. And then then over the last year or so, I realized Jen was always right there with him. So in February, end of January, February, we had the parent workshop that happened in Boston. And I got to meet both of them in person. I got to hold them. I got to hug them. I got to laugh at them, and I got to cry with them. And that's about all I'm going to tell my audience, you guys, about who Kelly and Jen are, because I'm going to let Kelly and Jen tell their story. So Kelly, Jen, thank you so much for being here this morning. If there's a short little bit you can tell us to get us started, let's start with a short little bit, okay? And whoever wants to start, whoever wants to feel this, I'm ready to start. We can also just, if you guys want to talk to each other and interview each other, you guys can do that.
Well, baby, you tell it.
You're a
tell
team.
it from her perspective.
Well, yeah, I think both of you.
I mean, Kelly, this on, Gail. So
right. So Kelly has the health issue, and Jen, you're his caregiver.
Yeah, we're about 19 years into this. So, you know, it was really kind of funny because when we first started dating, I think it was before I even proposed to him, it was, hey, so if I end up with a serious medical condition, are you the kind of person that's going to stick around? Are you the kind of person that's going to be like, this is too heavy for me and I need to move on? And so I was like, that's such a weird question I've never had anybody that I had dated or really anybody in my life question whether or not I was going to be resilient and strong enough to endure whatever, life throws our way. And so I was like, it made me think about it, but I was like, why are you asking me this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stay. Like, if we decide to commit to each other, like, you're it. Like, we kind of, that's part of the vows, right? It's in sickness and in health. It's not like in good times and bad times, I'm going to ditch you, So
can I explain why? I wasn't being prophetic. Okay. It's because I'd been divorced, and I was reading a book about love. and it was talking about one of the examples of love was a husband whose wife had MS, and he stuck with her to the end, and I just like, that's the kind of person I am. I'm that committed to us. And so I wanted to make sure that she was the same type of person. It was, if I love you, it's forever. It's not like, oh, when we're happy, I love you. When we're not, I don't. That's not love to me. So that's why I asked that question. That's where it came from that book. That's the kind of commitment I was just looking for.
Right. And don't we do want that. I think we all want that. We don't want to be left in the lurch, kind of, right? Well, God, now where did you go? I thought you loved me. And so, that's a powerful question. And as those of us with lipedema, as we're looking down at our bodies, and as our bodies start to slowly get less mobile and and we're in pain, I think that's something that goes through our minds. Why are you staying with me? Right? I mean, and or why aren't you understanding that I'm in pain? So now we know, Kelly, that Jen stuck, right? Like glue, right? But but there was something that happened, and Jen has stuck like glue, and you've stuck like glue as well, Kelly, because you're still here with us. So will you share a little bit about or a lot about your health condition on the health journey that you have been on?
Well, just real quickly, I mean, I will make this quick because it can be a long story. I was diagnosed with acid reflux in 2004-ish, 2005-ish, and they were trying to treat me with medications, and they weren't working.
Hold on a minute. You were in the Coast Guard.
Right. We're both retired Coast Guard officers.
Okay. So you were in the Coast Guard at the time.
Right. We're both. And so I went to the doctors, and they said, well, like, you have this 4 millimeter opening at the top of your esophagus. We want to go in and inject this polymer plastic in and make it close up. Basically, it's called like a bulking agent. And it's like, it's the same plastic that's in this Welch's grape bottle, in case you're curious. They just mix it with something, so hopefully they see where it goes. And so they went in, and this simple procedure took less than 30 minutes. They went in and injected that liquid, and it went in, and they accidentally injected it into my thoracic duct, my gastric lymph nodes, and then it took its path up into my heart. My heart lymphatics picked up some of the polymer. It went into my lungs. My lung lymphatics, everything, like, pulled the polymer out. And then it went into my liver, my spleen, and like all over, basically. And then a few weeks later, I was deployed in Iraq for my third deployment, coughing up plastic and trying to figure out what's going on, and with chest pain and things. And
so you were actually coughing up.
Right. I felt sick. If you can imagine being in a place where the temperature was like 125 degrees, 120 degrees, and you feel like you're sick. I felt like I had the flu the whole time, and I would cough, and then pieces of plastic occasionally would come out. And I'm like, what is that? Like, I work in electronics, and occasionally, like, I would strip bars from my teeth or something. Not often, but I'm like, is that what this from? Am I doing that? And I never could figure out what's going on. And then 2 years later, my sister calls me, because, like, everybody knows, I usually push through everything, and, like, I'm getting worse. And of course, then I'm swelling, I'm getting bigger, I'm getting large, and I can't exercise. And then so the Coast Guard, they have their programs where now you're being punished for being overweight. And so she called me, and she said, hey, that stuff they injected in you has been recalled. It was recalled, like, shortly after I deployed. And they're supposed to notify you when these things happen, but no one did. And so then I went, and it was funny. I went to my doctor and said, hey, look at this. And so they said, okay, we're going to get you a CAT scan. They got me a CAT scan. And I think the next day I was on a road trip, and I got this message from my doctor that said, call us for an emergency appointment, an immediate appointment. So I called Walter Reed, and they're like, okay, we can get you in 30 days. I'm like, that's not the immediate that I was looking for. And I went to the Coast Guard, because I went to back to the Coast Guard doc, and he pulled it up, and they basically said the plastic's everywhere. Like, and that's how that journey began.
So because it went into your thoracic duct, which we hear a lot about right now with Lipedema Simplified, because Catherine's having thoracic duct issues, and you've worked closely with her to help her find doctors and stuff. But it went into your thoracic duct, then it went everywhere.
Yep. So
your body your lymph system is full of plastic.
Yeah, it's in the lymph nodes of my liver. It's completely blocked my thoracic duct. It's in my mesenteric and lymphatics in your gut, lymphatics in my heart, lymphatics of my stomach, everything.
So, and up into everywhere.
Well, in 2008, they had to go in because they'd accidentally pushed that polymer on my vagus nerve when they were doing an endoscopic ultrasound. And they had to go in, and they found out that they don't know where it all is, because there was a contrast that was mixed with it, but they found out that it didn't mix with all of it. And so some of it doesn't show up on CAT scans.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
So I went from a perfectly healthy military guy who was doing Ironmans, running 50 to 70 miles a week, cycling about 110 to 200, and then swimming 10 miles a week, to suddenly being like on a weight program because I was being punished for being overweight. But at the same time, like within 5 years, I was seeing specialists for every organ who none of them knew anything about lymphatics, and very still don't. That's what's frustrating.
Right. And so then you're a retired military. I mean, you're retired from the Coast Guard.
They medically retired me in 2013, which that does not equate to compensation, just so you guys know.
Right. I'm sure it doesn't.
That just means we're done with you.
that means, okay, you're done.
Yeah, we're done.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you quickly learn they're not curious about really getting to, and honestly, this is all of Western medicine. They're not curious about getting to the root of anything, right? So before his sister alluded to the fact that, hey, I saw this, and was this what you had done a couple of years ago, he had an adverse reaction to the anthrax vaccination. So all the troops were vaccinated with anthrax before they went over to the Middle East. And so, that was a big deal for us at the time, because a lot of people grappled with, do I get this vaccine or do I get out? Because you had no choice if you were being deployed overseas. And so we really thought that it was, the kind of a reaction to the anthrax vaccination for quite a while. And so we were on that train. And that's not an easy train to be on either, because nobody wants to be open about if there are side effects or issues. And so they would bring in legal injunctions to stop the vaccination, and then you have to catch up on the series when then suddenly that legal injunction was overturned. And so we were on the anthrax vaccination issue train for quite a while, until his sister said, hey, I think maybe this could be, and sure enough, we looked at it, and it was a couple of months after Kelly had that procedure that they had stopped it, because it was killing people, and it's because they were over injecting. And the material that you got ahead of time was, listen, if this is over injected, it's going to be sloughed off into fecal matter. The body's going to take it out through the normal waste system. There was no conversation about that. Wherever this ends up, it's going to solidify the tissue. So it really is a battle in trying to deal with people, not only just in trying to understand lymphatics, but really kind of get to the heart of whatever you're struggling with, because they're really good at treating symptoms, either surgically or medication, but really trying to get to the root of what's happening, it just almost doesn't exist unless you kind of flip over into a functional medicine world of, okay, here's how the body essentially should work. And so it was really about trying to start how does the body work? So for both of us to learn how, I mean, really, ultimately, I went back to school at night for a anatomy and physiology course, and it was through that he and I started talking and realized that, it's likely your lymphatic system. And so it was really us kind of, I mean, and he certainly led the way, but it was always trying to tag team on what's, going down these paths of, could it be this? Could it be this? And so it was really trying to get an understanding of things that really the medical community has huge gaps in.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that we're sharing this because people always like, why? So when this happened, like I've told you the story. The plastic went in 2005. I immediately started having medical issues. 2007 is when they did the CAT scan. 2008, they'd gone in. I mean, they did ultrasounds and they were like, oh, Palmer's blocking his lymphatics of his liver. Palmer's doing this, So they knew it was blocked, right? But I can honestly, in 2008, they did an article with all the lymph nodes, and they talked about lymph nodes being full. And it actually states that maybe his esophagus is oversensitive. That's where the gastroenterologist, and that's in the journal, by the way. That's an article in a journal by my gastroenterologist. And so as I keep swelling, keep getting bigger, the only advice I kept getting is watch what you're eating. And I would take like food logs. I'm an engineer, and so lay it out for me. Tell me what I'm not doing. And no one knew. And so I went from being perfectly healthy to having congestive heart failure, kidneys failing, pulmonary issues, wound up on oxygen, and then everything kept shutting down. And like, that's when I realized, the medical side of this is bad. And then when I would go to the grocery store and you're large, especially if you have a kid and you're buying stuff for a party or something, I never realized how cruel people could be. I would tell Jen, I was like, the grocery store is a hostile environment for me because I never know who's going to give me nutritional advice. And I can tell you, and I think you guys know, I can tell you every molecule that I put in my mouth is supposed to be processed by my body. And when I say things like I've asked doctors, because it took till 2010 and me fighting to get a lymphoscintigraphy that they showed that there's no flow. And I would say, so how does the nutrients get to my body? And then all the doctors would look at me, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, those important essential fats that are very important for energy for the heart and kidneys mainly. That's their main source of fuel. And then like, how do my body make vitamin A, D, and K efficiently? And it doesn't. The whole process is messed up. And so it doesn't matter. And so when I realized that with plastic glowing on CAT scans and they were identifying or like lymphatics blocked and damaged and no one could treat me, I can only imagine people that have dealt with their entire life and gone to doctors in that hostile environment. It becomes a hostile environment because it's a defense. Like you're in defense mode the entire time. And I'm like, Jen, I've defended people, like this is my oath, right? Like, but I gotta defend them from the medical community, their ignorance. But it's not just the ignorance, their unwillingness to even like approach that new world of lymphatics. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I can't, I just know people suffer. And that system keeps
going. And you touch our community with that, Kelly, because like you say, it's a hostile environment. And so many of us, not just people with lipedema and lymphedema and so many of us, we go to the doctor for help and it's hostile. Those of us who appear fat, appear different, it's hostile. You're right. We have to be on the defense all the time. I know that I talk to the members of our community and they'll say, I have a doctor's appointment coming up. I need some support. We're all there, loving on that person because we know how first of all, I made an appointment, and our hearts, pretty soon we're having anxiety because, and our blood pressure starts to go up because we know that how they're going to treat us. We're going there for care, and they treat us nonchalantly, or like, well, get some weight off. I know you heard that forever. Get some weight off. You gotta take care of your weight. Yeah.
If you lose weight, and I'm like, if you knew what, and I go, well, do you want to, here, let me give you my food log. You want to approach nutrition now?
Yeah, I came unglued. He had a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and he's very positive about the GI doc, and this was last year, and it was like, I think he's a good one. And so then we come out of it, and he did not listen to Kelly, because Kelly said, don't remove anything if you find anything in my esophagus.
I said, don't do anything.
Yeah, and he did. He didn't listen. And then he mentioned some other stuff, and he said, but, I removed some polyps, but he patted Kelly's abdomen while Kelly's still loopy coming out of the procedure. And I'm sitting there, and he goes, but if you could do a little something about this, it might help the polyps on the other end. And I was like, we're done. We're done.
I'm grabbing her.
I stood up, and I was like, we're done. Like, I'm trying to push him out of the recovery section. And I'm like, you can grab your stuff. We're done, because you obviously haven't listened to any conversation that he's had with you, because you patting his abdomen is an absolute insult. Get out. We're done. We're not coming back, because it's all fluid and fibrotic tissue there. So just to even remotely allude to the fact that if he would just get off of his ass and start working out and watch what he puts in his mouth, then that would resolve all the issues. No, get out, because you don't have a clue. So you are no longer trusted to work on this body. Get out.
Of course, I'm on propofol enjoying the TV in front of me, like, wow, this is a good show. Wow. They should turn this into a series.
I mean, I'm a slow fuse. He will tell you it takes quite a lot for me to get to the point where I'm like, but when I do, when that fuse is lit, stand by for heavy rolls, because it's coming. Because I don't just, every day like spray that venom. But I mean, there are times that it's warranted, that you need to check yourself. You need to watch. You need to be careful and kind with every person that sits in your treatment room. I became a massage therapist last year in order to work on Kelly and to do body work. But I also work at a local chiropractor's office. And I would say it takes 15, 20 minutes out of a 60-minute session, because I want to check in. How are you doing? What's going on? And I'll tell you, most people talk about that. No, doctors don't palpate. They don't really want to hear what's going on. They don't look at the patient in the eye. They don't. And so I find that all of these other modalities are kind of fitting in to meet that care just energetically and emotionally of that person, because they're not being heard and they're truly not being seen by the medical community. And Kelly will often tell you, you will often hear him say, he's not a unicorn, right? The way that he ended up with all of the medical issues that he has is unique in a sense that he's, we don't know too many other people that have been fully injected with plastic, but the things that are cascading because of that, really a lot of people we find are very similar, that, it's the same system. We all have pretty close to the same system. And when it starts to dysfunction, it dysfunctions in similar ways. So his plastic is the unicorn, but that really, I think, is just the uniqueness. But everything after that becomes a lot of similarities.
Right. I think so too. And I find that each one of us, we have these stories we tell that are very similar, because we are fighting for our lives. We're fighting for, we really are. And when we hit walls and we don't understand why, because are we not all human, and are we not all kind and compassionate? Now, I can tell you we're all so unique, but we're not that unique. But we really aren't that unique, right? We have enough similarities that we're still all human, right? And the humanity, it seems like so often in the medical community, that somehow the humanity isn't there.
Right.
There
Well,
are other things driving it.
Yeah.
it drove me crazy, and you see it in all, like, and I'll be honest with you, it doesn't matter whether it's the doctor or the therapist. Like, over the last year, there was a lot of focus on lymphedema and mental health. And I thought it was really funny. It's coming from the medical community, like your therapists and your doctors talking about how we should deal with our mental health. And I'm like, you guys are the cause of my stress. Like, you are 95% of the stress. If you would get on board and learn this system, then you wouldn't be like, there would be no stress, because the rest of the world couldn't jump on us, right? Like,
Right.
you guys create that attack of me. And I mean, this is what I shared this with you. It's really frustrating. They're not the only people that have saved lives. I have saved people with blood coming out of them. I've caught in the cars on fire while I was not at work, like to rescue people. I did it putting my life at risk at the same time, and I get nothing. I get the same thing that everybody else gets. And not that I want special treatment, but come off your horse a little bit, cowboy. Like, I've been there. I've saved people's lives. You know what I never lost is my humanity towards that person. And that's why when I went to be a patient advocate, and I started realizing that a lot of people had cancer, a lot of women, especially ovarian cancer, hysterectomies, and things like that, and they're getting treated for lymphedema below the knee. And I'm like, that's not, and it really developed after that. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a bigger issue. They're treating symptoms. They're not treating where the cause. And I said, Jen, like, I'm not a unicorn. It's just not being diagnosed. And that's another,
Right.
they have a dogma in the medical community, and they support it, is we do not like to diagnose what we cannot treat. And I'm like, if I would really love to have recorded every conversation, because this is from 6 prevalent medical professionals. And I'm like, think about this. How does anybody know they need to treat it or even research it if you're not diagnosing it? And so they run from things they cannot diagnose. And then think about me. I'm trying to get research funding, and the first thing you get is, how many people have that problem? Can't tell you. Doctors won't diagnose it. That's what I have to say. And they're looking at me, and I was like, I'm not kidding you. That's a dogma. And that's when I get out of the world of like, well, as doctors, we're practicing. No, you're in a dogma, because as a practice, you would be open to new information. And they're not. I was recently on a phone call with the doctor, and we were talking about, and he goes, we don't know if it's a lymphatic issue or the person has ischemic heart disease. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, what? And I'm like, ischemic heart diseases have been determined to be caused by dysfunctional lymphatics. That's the problem. You're still in your dogma from 30 years ago. And this is a heart condition, right? And I'm like, that's why anybody I see struggling to get diagnosed, to get treatment, I'm like, Jim will tell you, I was like, it's got to be lymphatic. And they're like, well, why are you saying that, Kelly? And I was like, here's the thing. They want me to, like, I can't prove them right, but you prove me wrong. That's what I start telling doctors. Prove me wrong. And they can't, and they won't, because they just, they run from it.
Yeah, and that's it. Both of those that popped in my head just now are so lipedema oriented as well. Because doctors like, well, I can't really diagnose it because I'm not going to diagnose it because I can't treat it. Because doctors can't really treat lipedema. I mean, that's not, unless they're going to be surgeons, right? And use liposuction to treat it. They can't really it's because all the treatment's up to us.
Right.
But we need the diagnosis.
Right.
We do. Right. But the everyday treatment so often is up to us. And it's up to us to find a lymphatic therapist. It's up to us to find our compression. It's up to us, so all those things are up to us. And so they can't treat it. So why even learn how to diagnose it if you can't treat it? But we do need the diagnosis. And then what do we do if they could get off the, oh, look, it could be that, instead of us saying, prove it's not this, because they can also not prove that it's not that it's not lipedema. They can't do that either. So
I
everything you're saying is, and it's not just lipedema. It's there's so many things, you know, that they go, don't come at me with this. I don't know. I don't know. But, and it's also, in a way, it's not that particular individual doctor's fault. It's the whole system. The
right.
whole system.
And it's hard. For me, that's what I want. I would like to find doctors that really want to learn this stuff. And because that's when I was talking to one of the directors of NIH, she said to me, like, Kelly, what's been your biggest problem? And I'm like, well, I've seen cardiologists, nephrologists, pulmonologists, and all that, right? And I was like, I've seen 60 doctors now, and every one of them walk away knowing that I know more about the lymphatic system than they do. And not one of them has said, man, I'd really like to jump on board with this. And if I was doing research, and I do a lot of digging through papers and research and trying to figure things out, if there's one thing I would research, it would be lipedema, because I think it would open up the world more to, because you cannot, lipedema is like, I can understand secondary lymphedema and primary lymphedema. Lipedema is going to be the key to unlock the picture, in my opinion, because it encompasses so much of like areas we haven't looked at. And that's where I go. When you cannot diagnose and treat somebody, you don't keep putting them. It's like, how many times have you quit running into the brick wall, right? Like, you know what? Either remove it or go to another path. But no, that's what I keep seeing. And I'm like, how do we have such brilliant doctors that say, well, no, like, I don't know this wall, but here, you just keep sending the patient into the wall. And I'm like, I don't do that. Not even the military. Like, I was very blunt and very, like, that's not the wall I'm facing. Like, that's ridiculous.
Right. Well, and with lipedema, we get the questions all the time. Well, I heard that lipedema is a fat disorder. Okay. I heard that lipedema is a lymphatic disorder. Mm-hmm. Yep. I heard that lipedema is a connective tissue disorder. Uh-huh. Which one is it?
It's all of it. It all plays together.
Is it genetic? Is it genetic? Sure. We just keep, because it is. It's all of it, because it's a human disorder, right? Because it's a hormonal disorder. It's there, and like you say, figuring it out. And we do have amazing doctors who are working really hard to figure it out, like Stanley Roxon, and then we have this whole community who are self-advocating, who are trying to teach the medical community, this is going on. Listen to me. I don't have all the answers, but I seem to have all the questions, right? So at least listen to my questions, because they're valid. And then the other thing that I like to think about in all this is we are all at different stages, because we're all so individual, and our journey doesn't all take the same path, but we're all here supporting each other. And Kelly, I have to say, I appreciate all the support you give us. Jen, you as well. Because working, Jen, I know it's like Jen, but to then have the support that you give us as a couple, as a man who's going through something similar. I mean, your journey is similar to ours in such a way that you fight the medical community, and things are going on in your body that you have a root cause in yours that you can really see with the plastics, right? But knowing full well that people are still not listening to you, and they're trying to make it your fault, and they're trying to go, it's all in your head, and they're trying to say, if you would just do this, you'd be fine. Okay, I've got my 15 minutes done with you, you're out. right, I'm done with you because I only got you on my books for 10 minutes and I can't do anything for you. Why are you even here? Always coming back on, almost in a sense, I shouldn't say even almost, but basically they're throwing the shame back on you.
Yeah. And I just, if I lived my life like that, like people talk about how people with lipedema, like, you basically become hermits. Like, and I understand that. I did not. I didn't understand the disease. I grew up with if someone was obese, like we don't criticize them. What can I do to help? That's the attitude. Do you need any help? Can I help you with anything? That's, now living through this though, and watching how the medical community still continues to treat me. It's funny. Um, it's just amazing to me watching all this play out, and it's just, again, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, it's just frustrating for me to see people struggle like this. And like to be honest with you, people thank me, say, "Oh, you're a hero," but I'm telling you, the fact you're still battling this disease with I mean, I've heard stories of like where like your spouse didn't support you or your doctors, and I know what your doctors are doing. Like the fact you're continuing here, you're battling. You are my heroes, because when you battle something for that long, think about it. If someone's like being a Coast Guard guy, someone's struggling in the ocean for 6 months, to stay alive. I mean, you rescue someone gets rescued like that. You're like, man, that is amazing. And it motivates us to say we need to prevent that from happening again. How do we miss that person, right? How do we not find that person? Because it is very difficult to find people in the water, just so you know. But like, how do we miss that person? And we talk about everyone we missed at the end of when we get together. And it's a somber moment because those movie scenes really do happen in real life. And so, but I realize that's happening every day for someone with lipedema. They've done it since they were children. Someone has told them it's like, don't eat this and don't eat that. You're eating too much. And I really realize like people are eating very small amounts of food just to sustain just enough energy. Some of them not even that. And how you've made it, I don't care whether you're 5 or 70. It amazes me how you've like
the resiliency.
The resiliency. So you're strong forward. People. I'm just trying to tell you, like, I'm an advocate. I'll fight for you. And if you're in the room with me, I can shut them up quickly because I can say, look at my CAT scan images. And I've been to 60 doctors who see these same images and still go, well, if you just eat well, and they can't answer very prevalent questions that I ask them. I'm like, see, right. This is the ignorance. This is the struggle. Now, she doesn't have that. She could have the same thing going on, but they don't know. And they've not even taken the time to look. They've always pointed it at her and said, it's your fault. It's your fault. That's why Catherine say, I will tell you, that woman is a force. She is like, she set up this tribe, but she is a force to be dealt with. It's hard to tell her no. And she like when I finally heard her full story, I talked to her one-on-one and we talked about her growing up. And I realized that as she's telling me at age 74 when we talked, her life, that's what every young girl's life has been like, that's turned into a woman and other young girls are going through. And I'm like, so like, here's our oath, it's, defend the Constitution, basic thing in the preamble, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's our goal. That's what we're here to protect. Every person's right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And lipedema and the ignorance in the medical community is preventing that. And so that's what our fight is. That's to get everybody their right for that.
Yeah. And before we started, Kelly, before we went on live, and while behind the scenes, we were talking about how you touched me, about you, Kelly, you and you, Jen, how you fought for we always think thank you for your service for our country. When I met you this winter, in Boston, when I was spending that time with Catherine, when I was spending that time with Ray, Dr. Perrin, and all these clinicians, and I was meeting people, and Kelly and I would sit out while classes were going on sometimes, because just for the privacy of the other clinicians that were in there who were learning treatment. And of course, it was treating time, so they were getting chest massages and things. And so Kelly and I would step out. And I heard your story, Kelly, and I heard your battle, that much of it. And I realized you fought for me personally. And you're still fighting for me personally. And you are too, Jen. And you're fighting for every single one of us. For the world. And I get really emotional because I never saw it that way before. Ever. I always thought, oh, thank you so much for fighting for my country. And it was like, that's off my shoulder. I said, thank you. But I want you to know that the gratitude for your service in the military, but for your service since the military, what you do for us every day. That's why I have your website up, vetfightinglymphedema.com. You are still fighting for us because you're fighting for yourself. And I'm a mess. I'm sorry.
I'm turning into one because I hate to see people suffer. That's why I joined the Coast Guard. I don't, and I can't disconnect. Jen will tell you, I cannot. Like, if I meet you and you're suffering, it weighs on me of how the hell. And that's the funny thing is, I don't know how you disconnect. I mean, I guess as a doctor, you have to have some normalcy in that. But how do you? I mean, I understand that you have to disconnect at some point, but the humanity needs to remain. And the stories I learn from every person I talk to. And like you said, no one's the same, but there's key points that are, and those key points are what the doctors should be trying to focus on. But if you don't get the story, you don't get the information to even move forward. And it's real easy. It's real easy. It's easy for the doctor to say, oh, it's obesity, because then they do nothing. Because then it's all your fault. And that is, even with all the plastic, they still do that to me. And I'm like.
But here's the thing. Obesity is not our fault either.
Mm-mm.
General obesity is not our fault. And we have members in our community who say, I was a bad girl because I ate wrong. In that, it's like, that's not our fault. I mean, I would love to be able to go, it's their fault, right? That it's the food industry's fault, and it's the government's fault, and but it's our medical professionals' fault. But when you look at it's the whole picture, and we're in it. How many of us who are overweight don't know we're overweight? And we're said, a lady, one of our members the other day said I was asked the other day, have you considered losing weight? Are you kidding me? Like, I haven't considered losing weight. I haven't even thought about, I didn't know I was this size. I had no idea that I was, that the BMI was in the 40s or 50s, It's like, how dumb do they think we are?
Right. And they relate it to your willpower. That's what
theories right now.
Then they relate it, you just don't have
sorry.
willpower. And then that's when I come in with nutrition and say, well, if your body can't process this, then what's it going to get? What's your body is going to try to tell you? It's going to make you crave things because it's fighting to stay alive. It's going to try to get you to eat things because it needs that energy. And so That's
it's
really
we've talked
for me.
So when we go ahead, Kelly, I'm done.
For the last few years,
Go
I'm
ahead.
trying to say I would really love, like I don't, like you said, the medical community there's ignorance in there, right? Well, my goal is to tell people I'm trying to find doctors to work with us, and I think and to understand that we carry a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of disease information too. But like
Right.
that's for me. Try to work with your doctors. Don't get frustrated with them. Trust me, Jim will tell you. It's funny you said like I was recommended for a psych eval, and he got it because when he recommended that, I actually had him up by his throat because he was saying all my issues were in my head, and I'm like, "Are you ignoring the plastic that's glowing like in that?" And that's funny. That was 2007, and it's 2019, and it's 2024, 2024, and it still happens. Like, ignore the plastic. And so, even if in the way I ask them questions, they'll divert. Gastroenterologists, me, are my biggest nightmare because they own the most and they know the least. They know how to do colonoscopies right now, and that's about it.
Well, and it was shocking. I went through a nutrition class about a decade ago to see, because we tried a ton of stuff. We tried macrobiotics, we tried autoimmune disorder diets. It was he went completely vegan, which almost killed him. Like, we've done so many things because ultimately you're nothing but biochemistry, right? So your body is biochemistry, and the food that you put into your mouth, everything that comes in is chemistry. So how do those chemistries work together? And it's really hard to find somebody accessible within the scientific community to have that conversation with on, okay, if I take this in, how does my body deal with it? What happens if it doesn't deal with it, right? So I was surprised going through that nutrition class that it's not a requirement for any medical doctor to have one course in nutrition, 0. And then a nurse has to have at least 1 before getting their nursing license. And so I was astounded because how many doctors do you see that will give you nutritional advice? But yet, unless they've sought additional training outside of their, if they have a continuing education that they learn about nutrition, they're not educated in it at all. And so, it's like you'll go to a doc and you say, well, I'm trying keto, and they fall apart, right? Or I've tried carnivore or Atkins or whatever, and they fall apart because they're reading the big bylines that come in their medical journals about diets, but they're really not digging in and trying to figure out, like, ultimately, how does the chemistry of this food and the chemistry of the body work together? And what happens when it doesn't? They're just sticking to, okay, this is whatever my PA has told me or whatever this article says. And they have no foundation in nutrition at all. And I just could not believe it because they're the primary drivers of, you're overweight, you need to lose weight. But that's because that's what the industry says, right? That's what BMI. Right. If I could get rid of one word in all of language around the world, it would be obesity. Because to me, it's a catch-all escape for the medical community, as Kelly said, to put it on every person who shows up asking for help. You know that you're large. You live in it every day, the weight of it, how it feels emotionally, physically, right? So it's not like it's this sudden surprise of, hey, I think you're overweight and you probably need to lose weight. That's not really the conversation I want to have here. I'm in full awareness of it 24/7. Right. You don't need to point the obvious thing in the room to me, right? But in that, you don't have the education to even talk to me about it. So why are you bringing it up? Because there's nothing that you can do for me, because this is not your wheelhouse. You're a cardiologist, you're a whatever. And how much nutrition experience do you have to even have this conversation with me right now? You don't. Right. So stop having it. Like, I really, you're right. Environmental, it's an industry. It's, it's so many things that create this puzzle of obesity that it's not one thing. And it really, it really is a catch-all, easy scapegoat. And I'm tired of it.
Right. So I saw a nutritionist once who gave me a food plan, and So I looked at the food plan, and I'm like, but like, how does my body process this because of this, right? This is blocked. This is not working, right? She couldn't tell me. If you just eat this way, and this, I'm telling you, this is the way she talked to me. If you eat this way, like you will get smaller. And I'm like, no, I won't. I eat this way. I've eaten that way. And I'm like, and that's the thing. I'm not the kind of guy that cowers when you come at me that way. I actually get bigger and I get madder. I'm a fighter. That's what they forget. Like, not only was I willing to risk my life, I was trained in like I fight, and that's what I do. And so and I fight with logic and knowledge. And I'm like, that's why I'm always trying to stay ahead of or up on the research and things, because I see people get stuck in their dogmas, which eliminates the word we're practicing medicine. You're practicing if you're learning. As soon as you quit learning, you're no longer practicing. You're in a dogma. And people are suffering and dying because of your dogma you just adopted, because it puts zero responsibility on you and everything on me, but I have no control. And that's what everybody with lipedema is dealing with. You know, I never understood it, and people don't until you live it. And you're like, wow, this is crazy how they're ignoring these CAT scan images and knowing that I have all these issues. And then I bring research in, and apparently they don't have time to read it. Like, I'm like, are you shitting me? like if you don't have time to read, you should not be practicing anymore, or something's got to change. I mean, I say you can't find it, so I'll find it for you. I bring it in, and you don't want to take the time to read it. That's why I told Jen, it's like, it doesn't make a difference what we write anymore. You might as well just create graphics and videos, and don't make those too long, or you got to make them like maybe put like romantic scenes in the middle of them as you're talking, because everybody wants to be entertained. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what else do I have to do? I have 4 terabytes of medical research on lymphatics since 1860 that I have gone through, right? So of course, when I'm sitting in the room with the doctors, especially today, even the ones treating people with lymphatics, I can tell you this, with lymphatic issues, I know more than they do. I know where the research is. I know where it was, like in 1875, you know. And you're like, what happened between 1960 and 2000? Where do we go? Like, there was nothing.
Big gap.
Big gap. Big gap.
Wow.
We used to know a lot.
And then we used to know.
We did. Like, he'd bring research in, and I'm like, 1915, you know. And like, I mean, because current research, when they roll out, they'll, you know, sometimes have 300 citations of other research, and I always go through those lists when he hands me stuff. I'm like, okay, well, what are they citing? And I mean, stuff from the early 1900s, and I'm like, what? Like, they knew a lot. They just didn't have the technology necessarily to image like we do today, but they knew so much. And a lot of it, you know, like lymphatics in the brain, right? So you look at it and you see late 1800s, early 1900s, they talk about lymphatics in the brain. And then you fast forward and somehow that information disappears, and no, we don't have lymphatics in the brain. And it wasn't until 2015, because now we can image it and prove that it exists, that, oh yes, we do have lymphatics in the brain. Well, yeah, no, we knew that like 100 years ago. So what happened with that gap? So it was like we knew a lot. And then it was like really in the 20s, 30s, like things started to shift, where it was like, it was almost a rollback when you start to follow the science and the research of it, that it was like a press pause, and we're not going to focus on this stuff, and we're just going to spin off in this direction. And so it astounds me sometimes, the research that he will pull up, and I'm like, wow, like we knew about this 100 years ago, and it really hasn't seemed to make headway, right? Like, you know, you look at cancer and how much money and research has gone into cancer. And I mean, really, like, that's the leading ship in this research vessel, right? Is cancer research. And yet, where are we today with more and more and younger people with cancer? And so it's just, it always is a question of like, what direction are they headed in, and why we seem to have this info, but they don't do anything with it, you know?
As a Coast Guard officer, if you were driving that ship, you'd be relieved of command.
Yeah.
Just telling you, that's a blatant. That is loss. It's due to loss of confidence.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And, I know in so many of our webinars that Catherine has that slide that says, Allen and Hines in the Mayo Clinic was like, look, lipedema, look at these fat column, the fat columnar legs. That was painful in 1940, right? And here we are 80 years later, 84 years later, still going, hello.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at 11% of the female population. Hello. We're out here, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm a rare engineer, I guess, because when I look at, when you say 11%, that's millions of people suffering.
Yes.
Like, how do you go home at night and sleep? Like,
I know.
we would lose our minds over like one person.
Right.
I mean, I used to just not joke, but literally, if we had to, we'd launch the entire East Coast to go find 5 people in a sailboat. Who
Oh,
shouldn't
yeah.
have been out there in the water where they're not supposed to be. But it's like we got to save those people, right? But people have been
Right.
programmed and trained to. And I'm not saying I don't want you living in it because, gosh, that's not a good place. But like ignoring it's the worst. That's the
right.
That's
And
the part.
they talk about with lipedema. You'll hear people say, that this is a rare adipose disease, and I think,
11%
wait a
is not
minute,
rare.
11% of female population isn't rare, but that's still over 5% of the human population, right? Granted, we're not talking about men. So of course, me as a woman, I go, well, guess what? that's pretty typical for us. And but we see it as in a genetic way. I mean, there's some genetic stuff in it. So maybe the men in our families do carry this gene. So yes, it does affect them as well. And it's a family thing, because I'll tell you, my family knows I have lipedema because my family members have lipedema. So it's very visible where I'm from, in my space, from looking from Gail's head out. It's very visible to me.
So you want me to
But
tell you a little
until
Kelly now? I'm sorry, go ahead.
say what?
Let me tell you a little twist in there. Is
I do.
it really could be a man disease, but you have to understand we have different hormones, so it would present differently in us. That's what no one gets.
Exactly.
Your fat is going to accumulate differently, and that's why you cannot, like, information that women carry. It doesn't pertain to men and vice versa. It's just your estrogen levels are different than ours, and so your fat is going to accumulate differently than ours. And so you can
Right.
see obese men who can't understand why they're obese, who literally have lipedema. It just looks differently. And this is me doing the research, and I'm like, I think from where I'm looking, this is why I look at everything like as a whole, and like, because I don't believe people they don't have the willpower and other stupid issues that, like, people want to be healthy and happy. Right. And so when you look at these things, like, yeah, it could be a man disease. We just, again, if you feel a man and he doesn't have the nodule like fat, it may not present that way because his fat is going to accumulate differently. His system is different.
Yes. Have you been talking to Siobhan Huggins? Because she told me that like 2 years ago. And this is what Dottie Norris says. Yes, I got it from my father's side of the family. My mother didn't have lipedema. And I can tell you, my mom did have lipedema, now that I can look back at her. And so did her sister and her mother. But mine doesn't express the same way as hers. My daughter, who has it, one of my kids, Al, it shows up in their legs the same as it does mine. My other daughter has her grandmother's from her dad's side. So my husband's mom had, now I love this picture. Those beautiful heart-shaped butts that are on some, that just, it's like you're just following the most beautiful heart-shaped butt down the street. That was my mother-in-law. Tiny, tiny little feet, beautiful heart-shaped bottom. I mean, like, I love the way my mother-in-law was shaped. She just like adorable, right? My oldest daughter has that same shape. I don't have that shape. I have it all. I have that big roll of the thighs. My thighs go in front of me, right? And my daughters go like this, just like this gorgeous heart, almost a perfect Valentine that I could follow. Definitely like her grandmother, not on my side, but on her dad's side. So I look at that going, holy moly, that lipedema, however her body stores that particular type of fat, didn't come from my side. It came from Grandma Jenna's side, right? And I'm like, so how does my husband express his lipedema? Now I know that that's giving it away to him, but I'm like, how does he express it? He might not even express it like fat. It might be all connective tissue.
Exactly.
Because, maybe it's all expressive tissue, connective tissue for him.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we don't know, but we can't find out unless people start asking the questions.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, it's a woman's disease and it's rarely diagnosed. Well, it's rarely diagnosed because you're not diagnosing it. Come on, pull your heads up.
Right.
Get this diagnosed. We can take a look at it. So yeah, I think that this conversation has been fabulous. And I know I gave you 20 minutes. It's the longest. No, it's not the longest 20 minutes I've ever given anybody. We can go on forever.
I can.
I know you can. And I have loved every minute of it. I do have to do a little bit of promotion here. So you guys have been on our Heart to Hearts before. I know you, Kelly, you've been on our events. We've had you with Lipedema Simplified. So I do need to let everybody know that we are getting prepared for our Heart to Heart. It's in April, the Heart to Heart virtual 3-day event conference. It's called Keto and Beyond, because really there's more to life than keto. Every single one of us needs to live in our life, and therefore we find the foods that make us feel better. Just like Jen says, how does this food fit in? How does the food biology of this food fit into the biology of my body, right? So there's going to be talk about nutrition. I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop the link into the comments right now, so that if you have not yet signed up for our Heart to Heart event, registered for our Heart to Heart event, please take a look at our sales page right there. It will have all the information. I'm a little saddened that Kelly and Jen will not be speakers there. That's why they're here beforehand, so you could get all of the Kelly and Jen Bell connection and information. But I want to make sure that you have that event. Now, here's another thing. Kelly and Jen know less than Keith. I think we know less than Keith. Anyway, Dr. Less Than Keith, the amazing Less Than Keith, is actually having a free webinar tomorrow. No. Don't quote me on that. I always get tomorrow mixed up with Thursday. Don't ask me why. Anyway, so because I always think that today's Wednesday. Anyway, so Less Than is going to be presenting a free webinar, Nutrition Strategies to Support Lymphatics, with Dr. Less Than Keith. It's on Thursday, March 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to put that also in the comments. Here's the great thing about the free webinars that we have. It's free webinars. If you sign up for a free webinar, you get the replays automatically. So if you can't make 5 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, if you can't make it, sign up for anything. Register for it anyway, because we make sure that you get that replay. So let's say that Kelly and Jen are going, we've got soccer because do you guys still have a kid living at home?
He's turning 23 this month. So
oh my
he's my baby. But
he's your baby. I was like, do you guys still have that little boy? Anyway, so let's say you have to go play catch with your son at 5 o'clock Eastern on Thursday. So you don't get a chance to come to the free webinar with us then. So go play ball, go play catch with your baby. But you'll get the replays if you register. I'm sorry, Kelly. I don't know why I thought your kid was still little. No. It's been a while. But so I wanted to make sure that everybody knew those, and know those links. I'm going to put your names back up, you guys. Also, I do want to let you know that there is Learn. Before I put your name up, I want the community to know that Learn is at www.lymphaticnetwork.org. And this is the Lipedema Network, Lymphedema Network. Learn Lymphedema Education and Research Network is what that stands for.
Yeah,
Lymphatic Education. Thank you. Lymphatic Education and Research Network. So make sure that you get that copied down, audience, if you haven't been to their website before. And then, of course, Kelly, tell me a little bit about what you're doing with vetfightinglymphedema.com. What's up with that?
It's been in a static point because I kept getting pulled in multiple directions. And my goal is to use my platform as a veteran. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create videos take all the research I'm doing and put it out there for you to have in video form with links to where that research is at. So you can say like take it to your doctor, but then it's going to make you aware of what's going on with lymphatics, like what I've found over the years, what's kept me alive, and then let you know, like, I'll be honest with you, there's very few diseases that I don't think have a lymphatic component to it. And because so that's what you're going to be seeing on there in the next, I've got to figure out, I'm bought some stuff to learn how to do graphics, and so
it's all self-taught.
Right.
So, and keep in mind, he is a patient. So
yeah,
when days are not good, content and things like that don't happen, and they can be stretches of a couple of weeks. So I find it's really interesting that people often come to him and forget that he is a patient. He is still actively dealing with his own stuff. We actively deal with his stuff. And I think people are sometimes very forgetful that because he presents really well on the days that he feels good, that they don't see the other side of it when he doesn't. So I kind of have to be a little mama bearish in terms of like, you need to get out of this chair and leave this room and get away from the computer, because this setup is often very detrimental for him and his health. So it's a balance in things, and making sure that he doesn't overdo it, because he will give more of himself to help somebody else until the point where he can't even help himself. So it's just being mindful that he himself is still a patient that is still dealing with issues, that he will literally run himself into the ground for other people. Yeah. So my role is to pull him back and then tell everybody else no, and close the gate until he's well enough to be able to be good for himself, to be good for the rest of the community.
Yeah, a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with cerebral small vessel disease, which is the cause of 25% of strokes and 45% of dementias, and it is a lymphatic issue. And so when that happens, I literally cannot think. I mean, I struggle now. I'm nowhere near I was 2 years ago, and so I'm probably 50% function. Yeah. I can't remember things like I used to, and so things take longer. So just be patient. I'm trying to get as much information out to you that I've learned over the 19 years of living with this, 16 years of researching it.
Yeah. Oh, Kelly, thank you so much. And Jen, that's how you shared. Sometimes you have to say, Kelly, that's enough.
Yeah.
Step back. Look what we got to take care of you right now. And as a caregiver, those of us, we're caregivers. We're caregivers. So we care for our loved ones. We care for the world. And sometimes we forget to care for ourselves. Yeah. Because this is how we show our love for the world. And as a caregiver, we need to make sure that we turn that to ourselves, but it's so difficult.
Oh yeah.
And so I have a husband who's a caregiver for me, but I'm a caregiver for him too. And so, we're a team, and I see that you guys, you're this team, and it's our journey. And I see the two of you together, and I can't even tell you how happy I am to always see you guys. But you, all through this whole conversation today, you have been telling us your message that you want heard around the world. And usually I end my broadcast with, if there's one message that you have that you would like to have echoed around the world, what would it be? And I'm going to open that up to both of you. I have already heard so much that needs to be echoed around the world that we could quit now and, or not. We can just quit now and go, but if there was a message that you want echoed around the world, what would it be? And I'll let both of you have that.
I think for me, it's always been, I know this stuff is horrible, but find your peace. Find your calm, because nothing comes good in a firefight. That's what we always say. Nothing good ever comes in a firefight. So find your peace and find your calm. It's much better to live in that than it is in the frying pan.
And mine would be, you're not alone. Oftentimes I think especially with the health condition, you lose people. You lose friends, you lose family members because they don't understand the world that you're in, right? They just want you to be out of it. They don't want to hear how bad you feel today. And, you're 3 or 4 years into it. They get frustrated. And I think it's because it's a lack of communication in terms of just overall how you feel. And some people don't like that communication. So it can often leave you feeling like you're alone to deal with whatever you're dealing with. And it's ultimately that you're not alone, that you're given an opportunity to find the right tribe and find a community that understands to some extent, maybe not fully, but understands what you're going through, and be able to support you and lift you in a way that maybe you're not being lifted today. And so I guess part of that is resiliency as well, being able to continue to move forward and know that you're not alone in whatever you're dealing with, even though at times it does feel like it. It feels like you're alone out in the middle of the ocean in a hurricane and you just need somebody to come in and save you. And yeah, there are absolutely times like that, but know that not every day is a hurricane, and that if you can make it through today, you can make it through that storm, that hopefully you find safe harbor the next day and you happen to run into somebody who says, hey, check this out. Hey, have you heard of this? Hey, I've looked at this group. And so sometimes you also have to be open that things come your way. And if you always say no to it, or you always reject it because you're tired of being rejected, it's just having that openness that you don't have to be alone, that there is a tribe, there is a community, that there is support out there. Sometimes it's a little bit like a treasure hunt that you got to dig for it, unfortunately, but it is there.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys both so much. And with that,
thank you, Gail. We love you.
Thank you.
I'm
We love
speechless.
you.
I love you guys too. Thank you guys all for being here today.